The strange noise. John Smith couldn't stop smiling as he carried the last box into his new house. After 5 years of saving every penny from his office job, he finally had a place to call his own. The house wasn't fancy, just a small 2-story building with faded blue paint and a creaky front porch. But it was his. Home sweet home, he said, dropping the box in his living room. Dust flew up from the old carpet, making him sneeze. The house needed some cleaning, but the price had been too good to pass up. The real estate agent had seemed very eager to sell it, almost nervous even. As the sun began to set, John started unpacking his things. He hung his favorite movie posters on the walls and arranged his small TV in the corner. The work made him thirsty, so he headed to the kitchen to get some water. That's when he heard it. A low humming sound, like a machine running somewhere deep below his feet. Must be the water heater, John told himself, but something felt off. The sound had a strange pattern to it, almost like it was singing. He walked around the first floor, trying to find where the sound was coming from. The humming grew louder as he approached the basement door. John hadn't checked the basement properly during the house viewing. The agent had rushed him through it, saying it was just storage space. With slightly shaky hands, John opened the basement door. The humming got louder. He reached for the light switch and flicked it on. A single bulb lit up the wooden stairs leading down into darkness. "Hello," he called out, feeling stupid as soon as he said it. Of course, nobody would answer. It was his house now. He knew it was empty. Step by step, John walked down into the basement. The air grew colder with each step. The humming was clearer now, and he was sure it wasn't any normal house noise. It had a melody to it, something beautiful but completely alien to his ears. The basement was bigger than he remembered from the quick tour. Boxes and old furniture from the previous owner were still scattered around. But something was different. The walls seemed to be glowing. John moved closer to the nearest wall. His eyes widened as he saw strange symbols carved into the concrete. They were giving off a faint purple light, pulsing in time with the humming sound. He had definitely not seen these during the house viewing. "What the hell?" he whispered, reaching out to touch one of the symbols. As his fingers got close, the purple light grew brighter. The humming changed pitch, becoming almost excited. John quickly pulled his hand back. His heart was racing now. This couldn't be real. Maybe he was more tired than he thought. Maybe this was all a dream. But then he noticed something else. Behind a large metal shelf unit, there seemed to be a crack in the wall. Purple light was seeping through it. John's common sense told him to run back upstairs, call the police, and never come back down here. But something stronger pulled at him. Curiosity, or maybe destiny. With trembling hands, he began to push the heavy shelf unit aside. It scraped against the concrete floor, revealing what was hidden behind it. John's mouth fell open. There, in the wall, was a door. Not a normal door made of wood or metal, but something that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. It was made of some strange, smooth material he had never seen before, covered in the same glowing symbols that were on the walls. In the center of the door was what looked like a handprint. The purple light pulsed brighter, almost like it was inviting him to touch it. John stood there, frozen in place. Everything he knew about the world told him this was impossible. But here it was, right in front of him, real as the house above him. Slowly, as if in a trance, he lifted his hand. The humming grew louder, more intense. His hand hovered over the glowing handprint. "Just touch it and run," he told himself, "just to see what happens." John pressed his hand against the door. There was a flash of brilliant purple light. The humming turned into a musical chime. The door began to slide open, revealing a room bathed in that strange purple glow. And then he heard a voice, soft and melodic, but definitely not human. "My husband, you've finally come home." The alien bride. John stumbled backward, his legs shaking. The voice had come from inside the glowing room. As his eyes adjusted to the purple light, he saw her. She looked almost human, but not quite. Her skin had a slight purple tint that seemed to shimmer in the strange light. Delicate, glowing marks curved along her face like luminous tattoos. Her hair floated around her head as if she was underwater, each strand shifting between deep blue and violet. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. They were completely silver, with no pupils, yet somehow full of warmth. I think you have the wrong person," John managed to say, his voice cracking. "This is my house. I just bought it." The alien woman smiled, revealing teeth that seemed to sparkle like tiny stars. "No mistake, John Smith. This house was meant for you. The previous owner." She paused, her silver eyes showing sadness. "He passed away before our meeting. The house has been waiting for the right person. For you." She stepped forward, her movements graceful and fluid. She wore what looked like armor, but it moved like liquid metal, rippling with every step. "My name is Zara. I am from a world you would call Lyra 7, though in our language it has a name that takes 3 days to sing properly." John's mind was racing. This had to be a dream or a hallucination. Maybe there was carbon monoxide in the basement. That would explain the weird lights and the beautiful alien woman claiming to be his wife. "Look," he said, trying to sound brave, "I don't know what kind of scam this is, but—" Zara raised her hand, and suddenly John was floating 3 feet off the ground. "Does this help prove I'm real?" she asked, gently spinning him in the air before setting him down. "I understand your doubt. Your world is still young, still thinking you're alone in the universe. It's one of the things we find most charming about humans." John sat down heavily on an old box, his legs too wobbly to stand. There are more of you." Zara walked to the center of her hidden room. The walls were covered in what looked like liquid metal, with holographic displays floating in the air. She waved her hand, and a 3D map of the galaxy appeared between them. "My people are the Lyrans. We've been watching Earth for centuries. We're what you might call matchmakers." She pointed to different stars in the map, each lighting up at her touch. "We search the galaxy for species with potential. Humans have so much of it. You're creative, resilient, and despite your fears, remarkably adaptable." She touched another display, and images appeared of what looked like other alien-human couples. "We arrange unions between our people and promising individuals from developing worlds. It helps both species grow, share knowledge, and ensures peaceful relations when the younger species finally reaches the stars." "And you're supposed to be my match?" John asked, finding his voice again. Zara's expression became serious. "Yes. We don't choose randomly. I've watched you, John Smith. Your kindness to others, your determination despite difficulties, your dreams of something more than your ordinary life. These are the qualities we seek." John stood up, his head spinning with questions. "But I never agreed to this. You can't just decide someone's going to be your spouse without asking them." "Of course not," Zara said softly. "I'm not here to force anything. The choice is yours." But she looked away, and for a moment, John saw fear in her silver eyes. "I should warn you that my presence here isn't exactly official." A loud humming suddenly filled the room, different from the earlier sound. Zara quickly waved her hand, and all the displays vanished. Her expression turned worried. "They found me," she whispered. "Who's found you?" John asked, his heart starting to race again. "Both your government and mine. I'm what you might call a rebel. The matches are usually arranged between powerful families, political alliances." She moved closer to John, her silver eyes pleading. "I chose you myself. That's not allowed. They'll be here soon." As if on cue, bright lights suddenly shone through the basement windows above. The sound of cars pulling up could be heard from the street. "John Smith," Zora said urgently, "I know this is all shocking, but I need to know right now. Will you help me, or should I run?" Before John could answer, heavy footsteps sounded from upstairs. Someone was in his house. Zara's armor began to glow brighter, and she raised her hand, ready to defend herself or flee. But she waited, watching John with those impossible silver eyes, waiting for his decision. John looked at the basement stairs, then at the beautiful alien woman who had turned his life upside down in less than an hour. He thought about his ordinary job, his ordinary life, and the extraordinary choice before him. The footsteps got closer, and John made his decision. Hunters. John grabbed Zora's hand. There's no time to explain, but I'm with you. What's the plan? A smile flashed across Zora's face, her silver eyes glowing brighter for a moment. She pressed her hand against one of the liquid metal walls, and it rippled like water. The previous owner wasn't the first person to live in this house. My people have used it as a safe house for over 100 years. The footsteps reached the basement door. A deep voice called out, "Mr. Smith, this is Agent Cooper with the Department of Special Affairs. We need to talk." Zora pulled John toward the rippling wall. "Do you trust me?" "No," John said honestly, "but I trust them even less." The wall parted like a curtain, revealing a dark tunnel. Just as they stepped through, the basement door burst open. Men in black suits thundered down the stairs, their flashlights cutting through the purple glow. "Target is moving," one shouted. "They're accessing the tunnel system." John and Zora ran through the darkness, her glowing markings providing just enough light to see. The tunnel walls were smooth, covered in the same strange symbols from the basement. Their footsteps echoed as they sprinted deeper underground. "What is this place?" John asked between breaths. "Earth sits at a crossroads of space-time," Zora explained as they ran. "My people built these tunnels centuries ago as emergency escape routes. They connect to similar safe houses across the city." A red light began flashing on Zora's liquid metal armor. "Your government has better tracking technology than expected. They're following our energy signature." They reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. Zora hesitated, then pointed to the right passage. "This leads to..." She was cut off by a new voice, this one inhuman and speaking in a language that made John's ears hurt. The left tunnel lit up with a harsh blue light. "Lyran Security Forces," Zora whispered, fear in her voice. "They're trying to box us in." John looked around frantically. "What about the middle tunnel? It leads to the old subway system, but..." "Then that's our way out." John started pulling her toward it. "Wait." Zora stopped him. "There's something you need to know. The reason I chose you, it wasn't just about your qualities. Your DNA is special, John. You're what my people call a nexus human." More footsteps echoed from both sides. They were running out of time. "What does that mean?" John asked. "It means you can do this." Zora pressed her hand against John's forehead. Suddenly, knowledge flooded his mind. Symbols, patterns, energy flows. The glowing marks on the tunnel walls began to make sense. "Touch the wall," she instructed. "Think about where you want to go." John pressed his palm against the cold surface. The symbols began to glow brighter, responding to his touch just like the door in his basement. He thought about safety, about escape, about somewhere their pursuers wouldn't think to look. The middle tunnel's walls shifted, revealing a new passage that hadn't been there before. "Impossible," Zora whispered. "You shouldn't be able to do that without training." The blue light grew brighter from one direction, while shouts in English came from the other. John grabbed Zora's hand again. "We can be amazed later. Run." They dove into the new tunnel just as both groups of pursuers reached the junction. The wall sealed behind them, leaving no trace of their passage. The new tunnel was different from the others. Instead of alien symbols, the walls were covered in what looked like star maps. They ran until the sounds of pursuit faded completely. Finally, they stopped to catch their breath. John leaned against the wall, his mind spinning with questions. "Okay, start explaining. What's a nexus human? Why are your own people after you? And why does the government know about all this?" Zora's armor shifted, becoming less militant and more casual in appearance. The simple answer: "You're part of a very small group of humans who can naturally interact with our technology. It's why the House chose you, why the symbols respond to your touch. She waved her hand, creating a holographic display. It showed DNA strands, but parts of them were glowing like the symbols on the walls. The complex answer. Thousands of years ago, my people visited Earth. Some of them left more than just tunnels behind. Their descendants carry a unique genetic marker. Most never know it's there. But sometimes, like in your case, it becomes active. So I'm part alien. John felt like he needed to sit down. A very, very small part, Zora said. But it's enough to make you valuable. To make us valuable together. What do you mean? Nexus humans are rare. Marriages between them and Lyrans are supposed to be carefully controlled, used to strengthen political alliances. But I believe such gifts shouldn't be controlled by politics. Her silver eyes flashed with determination. That's why I ran. That's why I chose you myself. John was about to respond when a different kind of rumbling filled the tunnel. This wasn't pursuers. It was a subway train, passing somewhere very close by. Where are we? He asked. Zara studied the star maps on the walls. These tunnels run parallel to your city's subway system. They're shielded from scanning, but she frowned. We can't stay here long. Both groups of hunters will figure out what you did eventually. So what's our next move? Before Zara could answer, John's phone buzzed. He had completely forgotten he had it. The message was from his best friend, Mike. Dude, why are there government vehicles outside your house? And why is your basement glowing purple? Call me. John showed Zora the message. I know somewhere we might be able to hide. But it means trusting someone else with your secret. Zara studied the message, then looked at John with those impossible silver eyes. Do you trust this friend? With my life. Then we don't have a choice. She straightened up, her armor shifting again. But John, once we involve your friend, there's no going back. His life will change too. John thought about Mike, about their friendship since college. About all the times they'd talked about wanting something extraordinary to happen in their ordinary lives. I think, John said slowly, he might thank us for that. Zara nodded and held out her hand. Together, they began walking through the star-mapped tunnel, following the rumble of subway trains toward the surface, toward Mike's apartment, and toward whatever came next. Behind them, in the darkness, the star maps on the walls shifted, showing new constellations, new possibilities, new destinies being written with every step they took. Trust issues. Mike's apartment was on the third floor of an old brick building downtown. John and Zara emerged from a maintenance tunnel in the basement, checking carefully for followers before making their way up the back stairs. Your friend lives in an interesting location, Zara whispered, her silver eyes scanning their surroundings. There are 3 different tunnel exits within range, almost like someone planned it. Before John could ask what she meant by that, they reached Mike's door. He knocked, trying to look casual in case any neighbors were watching. The door opened immediately. Mike stood there in his Star Wars pajamas, eyes wide as he took in John's disheveled appearance. And then, Zara. Holy sh! Mike started to say, but John pushed past him, pulling Zara inside and quickly shutting the door. Okay, Mike said, backing away from them. Either this is the most elaborate cosplay I've ever seen, or, he pointed at Zora's shifting armor and glowing markings, I'm actually looking at an alien. It's complicated, John began. Really? Mike's voice rose. Because the government cars outside your house, the purple lights, and you showing up with someone who looks like she walked out of a sci-fi movie seem pretty straightforward to me. Zara stepped forward, her armor adjusting to look more like normal clothes, though it still had a metallic sheen. Your friend is afraid, John. Perhaps I should. She suddenly stumbled, catching herself against the wall. Her purple-tinted skin had grown paler. Zara. John moved to help her. What's wrong? The atmosphere, she said weakly. I've been away from my environmental chamber in the basement too long. Your air, it's not quite right for my biology. Mike watched this exchange, his expression shifting from fear to concern despite himself. "Is she dying?" "No." Zara straightened up with effort. "But I'll need to synthesize a temporary solution soon. The basement chamber was meant for long-term adaptation to Earth's environment. Without it." She left the sentence hanging. John felt panic rising. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because she knew you might not have helped her if you felt responsible for her survival," Mike said quietly. Both John and Zara looked at him in surprise. Mike sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I've watched enough sci-fi to know how this goes. Either you're the advanced scout for an invasion, in which case we're all dead anyway, or you're running from something worse, and judging by how you're looking at my best friend, I'm guessing it's the second one." Zara's silver eyes studied Mike intently. "You're more perceptive than most humans." "Yeah, well, working at support teaches you to read between the lines." Mike walked to his kitchen and came back with 3 beers. "So, why don't we start with the truth? All of it." Over the next hour, they explained everything. The house, the tunnels, John's Nexus human status, and the hunters. Mike listened without interrupting, only getting up once to close his blinds when a black car drove past. "That's a lot," he said finally. "But there's something you're still not telling us." He looked directly at Zara. "Who are you really? Not just your species, you specifically." Zara's armor rippled with what John had learned was anxiety. "How did you? The way you carry yourself. The advanced tech. The fact that both human and alien authorities want you badly enough to work together." Mike shook his head. "You're not just some random rebel." John realized Mike was right. He turned to Zara, remembering all the little clues he'd missed. Zara stood up, her posture changing subtly. Suddenly, she looked regal. "My full title is First Daughter Zaralin of the High Council of Lyra. I was next in line to lead my people." The room went silent. John felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. "You're a princess. That word is close enough." Zara began pacing, her movements graceful despite her weakening condition. "Our society is rigid, controlled by ancient laws and arranged marriages. The first daughter must marry a carefully selected Nexus human to maintain the balance of power." "But you ran away instead," Mike said. "Why?" "Because the human they selected was a cruel man who saw our union as nothing but a path to power. And because—" She looked at John, her silver eyes intense. "Because I had already found my true match." "How?" John asked. "We never met before today. Remember when I said I watched you? I didn't just mean through data and reports." She waved her hand, and a holographic display appeared showing scenes from John's life. Him helping a lost child at the park, staying late at work to cover for a sick colleague, giving his lunch to a homeless man. "I broke the rules. I came to Earth in secret, following you, learning who you really were, and everything I saw convinced me that you were the one I should choose." Her voice grew softer. "The one I would choose, if I had the freedom to choose at all." The revelation hung in the air. John's mind raced with implications. Mike cleared his throat. "Not to interrupt this moment, but—" He pointed at Zara, who was looking increasingly unwell. "We need to solve the immediate problem. You said you need to synthesize something." Zara nodded. "The elements exist on Earth, but they're rare. I need—" She stopped suddenly, her silver eyes going wide. Without warning, she collapsed. John caught her before she hit the floor. Her skin was burning hot, and the glowing marks on her face were flickering erratically. "Mike," John said urgently, "remember that chemistry professor you used to date? The one with the lab access." Mike was already pulling out his phone. "Way ahead of you." "But John—" He looked seriously at his friend while the phone rang. "If she's really this important, every second we spend in one place puts us all in danger." As if to prove his point, a helicopter sound grew louder outside, searchlights sweeping across the windows. John held Zara closer, feeling her struggle to breathe Earth's air. He looked at his best friend, at the alien princess in his arms, at the life he had just that morning slipping away forever. "Then we better move fast," he said, "because I'm not losing her. Not when I just found her." Mike nodded, foam pressed to his ear, while outside the helicopter grew closer and Zora's breathing grew weaker, marking the start of a race against time that would test not just their ingenuity, but the very limits of what friendship, love, and trust could overcome. The cure. Mike's ex-girlfriend, Dr. Sarah Chen, stared at the list of elements Zora had weakly scribbled down before losing consciousness. "These combinations shouldn't even be possible," she said, pushing her glasses up her nose. They were in her university lab at 3 a.m., with Zora lying unconscious on a makeshift bed of lab coats. "And some of these elements, they don't exist on Earth." "They do," John insisted, holding Zora's burning hot hand. "She said they're rare, but they exist. Please, Sarah, she's getting worse." Sarah looked at Zora's flickering markings and purple-tinted skin. Her scientific curiosity warred with her caution. "Mike, you know what you're asking me to risk here, right? My career, possibly my freedom." Mike stepped forward. "Remember that theory you had in college about evolutionary divergence and parallel development on other worlds? You're looking at proof you were right." Sarah's eyes widened. She walked over to her computer and began typing rapidly. There were reports, classified stuff I wasn't supposed to see. Mineral samples with impossible properties found in meteor crashes. "Where?" John asked desperately. "Most were collected by the government," Sarah said, still typing. "But there's a private collector, Dr. Marcus Way. He specializes in anomalous materials. The scientific community thinks he's crazy, but..." She turned her screen to show them a news article about a wealthy eccentric who claimed to have proof of alien life. "How do we find him?" John asked. "We don't have to," Mike said, looking at his phone. "There's an underground auction tonight, and guess who's selling some of his collection?" Sarah spun around. "How do you know about that?" Mike grinned. "It guide, remember. I see everything that passes through the university's networks, including private emails about very exclusive auctions." John looked at Zora, then at his friends. "We don't have any money." "No," Sarah said slowly, "but we have something better." She pointed at John's hand, which was absently tracing one of the alien symbols Zora had taught him. "We have proof." The auction was held in an abandoned subway station, accessible only through a hidden elevator in the back of an expensive restaurant. John had never felt more out of place in his borrowed suit, surrounded by wealthy collectors and mysterious figures in elaborate masks. "Remember," Mike's voice came through his hidden earpiece, "we just need to get close enough to wave for you to show him what you can do." Sarah's analyzing the security feeds from their network. No guards seemed to be carrying anything stronger than tasers. John moved through the crowd, looking at the display cases. Each held something impossible. Crystals that floated in midair, metals that changed color when touched, rocks that hummed with strange energies. He found Dr. Y by the small crowd gathered around him. The man was elderly, dressed in an immaculate white suit, with kind eyes that seemed to see right through everyone's pretenses. John waited until Y was alone, then approached. "Beautiful collection, sir." Way smiled politely. "Thank you, Mr. Smith." "John Smith." He lowered his voice. "I'm particularly interested in your theories about alien visitors." Way's smile became guarded. "Oh, and what makes you think my theories have any merit?" John looked around carefully, then held out his hand. Purple energy danced between his fingers, forming the symbols Zora had taught him. Way's eyes went wide. "Perhaps," Way said quietly, "we should discuss this somewhere more private." They walked to a secluded corner. John explained the situation quickly, watching Way's expression shift from skepticism to wonder to concern. "A Lyran princess," Way whispered, "here on Earth. And you're her chosen mate, a true Nexus human." He shook his head in amazement. "Do you understand how astronomically unlikely this convergence of events is? I understand she'll die without help, John said. The elements on this list, do you have them? Wei studied the list. Some, not all. But he looked thoughtful. I know where to find the rest. Suddenly, Sarah's voice came urgently through the earpiece. John, we have company. Government vehicles approaching from all directions. Wei must have gotten similar information through his own security because he quickly pressed a key into John's hand. Storage Unit 23, under the old railway bridge. Everything you need is there. Go. Alarms began blaring. The auction erupted into chaos as buyers fled through hidden exits. John ran for the service entrance where Mike was waiting in a borrowed maintenance vehicle. They sped through maintenance tunnels as sirens wailed behind them. How did they find us? Mike asked, taking a sharp turn. They didn't, came a weak voice from the back. Zara had regained consciousness. They were always watching Wei, waiting for someone like us to contact him. John held her steady as Mike drove. We got what we needed. Sort of. Can you hold on a little longer? Zara managed a faint smile. For you, I can do anything. They reached the railway bridge as dawn was breaking. The storage unit was hidden behind overgrown vines and graffiti, looking abandoned. But when John pressed Wei's key into a hidden panel, the wall slid away, revealing a treasure trove of alien artifacts. Okay, Sarah said through their earpieces from her lab. I'm looking at Wei's inventory through his secured server. We need the blue crystal in case C7, the metallic powder in drawer 13. And, oh my God. What? John asked, already grabbing the items. These aren't just random elements. This is a Lyran medical kit. Wei's been collecting pieces of it for years without knowing what they were. Zara looked at the assembled pieces with feverish eyes. Yes, I can work with this. But we need to. She collapsed again. This time, her markings barely glowed at all. They rushed back to Sarah's lab, working together. Following Zora's earlier instructions and Sarah's scientific precision, they began combining the elements. The mixture glowed with familiar purple light. It's ready, Sarah said. I think. But we don't know if. John was already lifting the mixture to Zora's lips. Trust, he said firmly. That's what this has all been about since the beginning. As Zora swallowed the mixture, her markings flared brilliantly, her back arched, silver eyes flying open. And far above them, impossible to miss, the night sky lit up with aurora-like lights in brilliant purple and silver. Oh no, Mike said, looking out the window. Please tell me that's supposed to happen. Before anyone could answer, every phone, radio, and computer in the lab began broadcasting the same message. Attention, citizens. This is not a test. First contact protocols are now in effect. John looked at Zara, who was sitting up now, her strength returning but her expression grave. What does that mean? He asked, though part of him already knew. It means, she said, that we've just changed your world forever. And my people, all of them, are coming. The purple lights in the sky grew brighter, marking the end of Earth's last night of believing they were alone in the universe, and the beginning of something much bigger than a love story between a human and an alien princess. The choice. The world changed in less than an hour. Every TV channel, every website, every social media platform exploded with the same images. Massive ships appearing in the sky, their hulls gleaming with the same liquid metal as Zora's armor. They hung over major cities across the globe, silent and waiting. John, Zara, Mike, and Sarah watched it all unfold from the university lab's small TV. The cure had worked. Zora was fully recovered, her markings glowing stronger than ever, but her face showed only worry. This isn't right, she said, pacing. The first contact protocols. They're meant to be gradual, diplomatic. This is something else. Your father? John asked. Zara shook her head. No, my father believes in the old ways, but he's not aggressive. This? She gestured at the ships on screen. This is my intended husband, Council Lord Vex. He's using my disappearance as an excuse for a show of force. Mike looked up from his laptop, where he was monitoring government communications. They're calling it a protective intervention, claiming they're here to save you from human captors. Classic manipulation, Sarah noted. They're making Earth look like the bad guys. Suddenly, all screens went dark. When they came back on, a new face filled them. A Lyran male with sharp features and cold silver eyes, his facial markings an aggressive red instead of purple. People of Earth. Council Lord Vex's voice was smooth, but carried an undertone of threat. Your world harbors something precious to us, the first daughter of Lyra, my betrothed. She was taken by a human, forced to hide among you. Return her, and we will remember this mercy when establishing relations with your world. Resist. The image showed one of his ships firing a beam that turned a small uninhabited island into glass. And we will remember that too. He's lying. John stood up angrily. Zara came here by choice. It doesn't matter, Zara said quietly. Look. The screens split to show scenes from around the world. Panic. Riots. Military forces mobilizing. And among the chaos, people pointing at the sky, some in fear, others in wonder. Your world isn't ready for this, Zora continued. Vex knows that. He's forcing a crisis to justify taking control. She turned to John, her silver eyes pained. I have to go back. No, John took her hands. We'll tell everyone the truth. Show them. Warning shots detected. Mike called out. They're targeting military installations. Just missing them, but the message is clear. Sarah's phone buzzed. Dr. Wei says his contacts are reporting movement in the old tunnels. Both human and Lyran forces are mobilizing. Zara pulled away from John. You don't understand. Vex doesn't want just me. He wants Earth. With me as his wife, he'd have legitimate claim to protect your world. Add in your Nexus human abilities. She shuddered. He'd use both to cement his power. So we stop him, John said. You're the first daughter. Your word should count for something. It's not that simple, Zara started to say, but was interrupted by a new transmission cutting across all channels. An elderly Lyran appeared, his markings a deep, wise purple. His eyes, Zara's eyes, held both authority and sadness. Father, Zara whispered. People of Earth, the High Council leader began. I speak to you not as a ruler, but as a father. My daughter believes in your potential. She has chosen one of you, breaking our laws but perhaps showing us a better way. I ask her now, come home, daughter. Not as a captive, but as a voice for change. Help us understand why you chose this path. The transmission ended. Zara stood frozen, tears like liquid starlight rolling down her cheeks. He's offering a compromise, she said softly. A chance to change things properly through our system. But you'd have to leave, John realized. The word leave felt like it was ripping something out of his chest. Before Zora could respond, the building shook. Through the windows, they saw transport ships descending. Multiple forces converging, Mike reported grimly. Human military from the east, Lyran security from the west, and something else from underground. The tunnels, Sarah gasped. Of course, other hidden aliens must be responding to this too. They were surrounded. But as everyone else panicked, John noticed Zora had gone very still, her expression changing from worry to determination. The tunnels, she repeated. John, do you remember what you did before? Creating a new path. Yes, but the original builders left a master control room, she said quickly. A nexus point where all paths connect. If we can reach it. She looked at him meaningfully. A nexus human and the first daughter, working together. We could give everyone a choice, John finished, understanding dawning. Not just us, not just Earth and Lyra, but a new way forward, Zora nodded. But we'd have to get there first. And if we're wrong. The building shook again, Through the windows, they could see soldiers taking up positions. Above, more ships were descending. John looked at Mike and Sarah. "You don't have to come with us." Mike was already grabbing his laptop. "Buddy, I didn't help an alien princess and hack multiple security systems just to skip the final." Sarah picked up her bag of analyzed alien artifacts. "The scientific implications alone. Besides, someone needs to document this." Zora's markings glowed brighter. "The nexus point is deep, below all known tunnels. We'll have to create paths as we go, and we'll have forces from 3 different groups chasing us." 4 groups, Mike corrected, showing them his laptop. Vex's personal guard just landed. John took Zora's hand, feeling the energy that had always flowed between them grow stronger. "Then we better move fast." As if in response to his words, the window exploded inward as a transport ship spotted them. At the same moment, the door burst open, revealing soldiers in black tactical gear. "Time to choose," Zora said, her armor shifting to battle mode. "What's it going to be?" John squeezed her hand and reached for the wall, letting the knowledge she'd given him flow. Symbols began to glow under his touch. "I already chose," he said. "The day you came through that door in my basement. Now," he smiled at her, "let's give everyone else the same chance." The wall parted like a curtain of light, revealing a path that hadn't existed moments before. As shots rang out behind them, the 4 unlikely allies dove through, beginning their desperate race to change not just their own fates, but the fate of 2 worlds. And somewhere far below, in the deepest of the ancient tunnels, something older than both human and Lyran civilization waited to see what choice they would make. New beginning. The ancient tunnels grew older the deeper they went. The walls showed layers of history, Lyran symbols giving way to even stranger markings, technologies from civilizations that might have visited Earth millions of years ago. "The nexus point should be close," Zora said as they ran. Behind them, multiple pursuit groups were converging. "These markings, they're from the builders, the ones who came before even my people." John kept one hand on the wall, feeling the energy flow through the symbols. With each step, his connection to them grew stronger. They're telling a story about choices, crossroads. Sarah was documenting everything with her phone. "These patterns, they're not just random. They're mathematical sequences, universal constants." "Guys," Mike called from behind, checking his laptop as he ran. "Whatever family reunion we're headed to, better make it fast. I'm tracking multiple groups closing in. And," he paused, "something else is moving down here. Something big." They reached a vast circular chamber. The walls were covered in shifting symbols from a dozen alien civilizations, all flowing like liquid light. In the center stood a pillar of crystal that reached from floor to ceiling, pulsing with every color imaginable. "The heart of paths," Zora breathed. "It's real." Before they could take another step, voices echoed from every tunnel leading to the chamber. Lights appeared, flashlights from human soldiers, the glow of Lyran weapons, and other stranger illuminations. Council Lord Vex emerged first, his red markings blazing. Fascinating. The myths were true, his cold silver eyes fixed on Zora. "Though I suspect finding this place wasn't your original plan when you ran away, my dear." "Stay back, Vex," Zora warned, her armor shifting to reveal built-in weapons. "You don't understand what this is." "Oh, but I do." Vex smiled without warmth. "A nexus of all possible paths. Imagine the power one could wield from here, controlling not just the tunnels, but the very connections between worlds." More figures emerge, human military commanders, Lyran security forces, and others. Some were clearly alien despite their disguises, representing hidden communities that had lived on Earth for generations. "Nobody is controlling anything," a new voice announced. Zora's father, the High Council leader, stepped into the light. He looked older in person, worn down by worry. "Daughter, what have you found?" "The truth," Zora said. She took John's hand. About us, about Earth, about everything. The builders didn't create these tunnels to control, but to connect, to give people choices. John felt the energy flowing stronger now, responding to their joined hands. The symbols on the walls began moving faster, and the crystal pillar's light grew brighter. "Listen to her," Sarah called out. She held up her phone, showing the translated symbols. "These equations, these patterns, they're about harmony, about different species reaching across the void to find each other." "Touching," Vex sneered. "But the reality is—" He was cut off by a deep rumbling. The crystal pillar's light suddenly shot out in all directions, creating a holographic display that filled the chamber. It showed Earth, then zoomed out to reveal hundreds of worlds, all connected by shimmering lines. A new figure stepped out of the light. It wasn't human or Lyran. It seemed to shift between forms, as if one shape couldn't contain it. "The Builder," Zara whispered in awe. The being's voice echoed in their minds rather than their ears. "You have and your way to the crossroads. As o there is, havbfor, as more ylft. Great One." Vex stepped forward, bowing. "Surely you understand the need for order, for control." "Control is an illusion," the builder's voice thundered in their thoughts. "The only constant is choice." The holographic display zoomed in on John and Zara's joined hands. "These two have shown the way, not through force, but through truest, not through politics, but through love." The chamber filled with more light as the builder touched the crystal pillar. Suddenly, everyone could see the connections, the hidden alien communities living peacefully on Earth, the potential for cooperation, the infinite possibilities that fear and control had held back. "It's beautiful," John's voice cracked with emotion. The symbols under his fingers were singing now, harmonizing with the energy flowing through Zara. The High Council leader stepped forward. "I understand now. Daughter, you didn't run from duty. You ran toward a greater truth." "The time of hiding is over," Zara said, "but the time of conquest should never begin. There's another way." The builder nodded, its form shifting like starlight on water. "The choice is yours, all of yours." The crystal pillar's light touched everyone in the chamber, and for a moment, they all saw through each other's eyes. The human commanders felt the Lyran's ancient knowledge. The hidden aliens remembered why they'd chosen Earth as their home. And Vex saw himself through others' eyes and stepped back, his red markings dimming. I never." "Now you know," Zara said softly. "Now everyone knows." The builder's form began to fade. "The crossroads, Royal or Yemayan, a place of choice, of qonnctyn. Use it wisely." As the ancient being vanished, the crystal pillar's light settled into a steady glow. The chamber felt different, not just a nexus of tunnels now, but a symbol of something new. The High Council leader turned to the assembled groups. "We have much to discuss, all of us." He looked at his daughter and John. "Perhaps we could begin with a wedding, one that celebrates connection rather than control." Zora's silver eyes filled with joyful tears. "Father." "Oh man," Mike wiped his eyes, trying to play it cool. "This is going to change everything, isn't it?" Sarah was still recording. Multiple intelligent species living on Earth, a network of interdimensional tunnels, the possibility of peaceful contact. "I'd say change is an understatement." John pulled Zara close. "Are you ready for this? Being a bridge between worlds is a pretty big job." Zara's markings glowed with happiness. "As long as we're building bridges together." She looked around the chamber, at humans and aliens already beginning to talk, to share, to connect. Besides, isn't that what love is supposed to do? Build bridges. The crystal pillar pulsed in agreement, its light reflecting off the walls like stars. Above, through the network of tunnels, the same light began to shine in distant places, in the basement of a house where it all began, in hidden communities around the world, and in ships high above that were no longer a threat but a promise. And in that light, John and Zara saw their future, not just their own love story, but a story that would help write a new chapter for two worlds, brought together not by force or fear, but by the simple, profound power of choosing to trust, to connect, and to love.